On this Saturday night, ominous signs of possible U.S. military action in Latin America. U.S. President Trump warns against flights over Venezuela as tensions with that country's president escalate, all while he plans to pardon a controversial Central American leader. Ukraine attacks Russia's shadow fleet of oil tankers, the onslaught ahead of a pivotal meeting with the U.S. Plus, Alberta's premier booed at her party's convention.
Victory is in sight.
Why the federal energy MOU may not be enough to quell separatist sentiments. And the world's new biggest city. Why Jakarta won't hold the title for long. And what Canada can learn from rapid global urbanization.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. U.S. President Donald Trump is escalating tensions with Venezuela, declaring the country's airspace closed amid heightened military activity in the region. To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, Trump says, consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. The move is yet another shot at President Nicolas Maduro, whom the White House has accused of heading a foreign terrorist organization linked to drug trafficking. But critics call it a contradiction as the Trump administration moves to pardon another Latin American leader convicted of taking bribes from traffickers. Candice Cole has the latest.
Venezuela's government has condemned U.S. President Trump's call to consider Venezuela's airspace, quote, closed in its entirety, denouncing it as a, quote, colonialist threat, violating its sovereignty as well as international law. And it's not going over well with everyday Venezuelans. This man calling it unfair as people need to travel for work and to see family. Saturday, U.S. aircrafts could be seen actively unloading cargo planes at the now reopened naval base in Puerto Rico, situated to the north of Venezuela, in preparation for a possible increase in military activity there. Since September, the U.S. has carried out nearly 24 strikes on alleged but unverified drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean, killing over 80 people so far. Thursday, in his Thanksgiving remarks, Trump told troops that plans to stop drug traffickers on land in Venezuela.
That's going to start very soon. We warned them. Stop sending poison to our country.
This is the latest escalation between the two countries after Trump declared Venezuela's Cartel de los Soles a foreign terrorist organization earlier this week, an operation he's accused Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro of leading. But as Trump continues to target Venezuela,
Juan Orlando volverá, volverá.
He announced plans Friday to fully pardon ex-Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, currently serving out a 45-year sentence in the U.S. for helping heavily armed drug traffickers funnel hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States.
Once again, thank you, President Trump. Thank you to your administration, to all the family and friends who have been there for us.
Hernandez was convicted under the Biden administration last year. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
Flights around the world are returning to normal tonight after a major software glitch. Airlines were forced to cancel and delay flights heading into the weekend after manufacturer Airbus ordered immediate fixes to some of its planes. A computer code may have contributed to a sudden drop in altitude during a flight last month. About 6,000 planes were impacted, with most needing a quick software update. In Canada, Air Transat reported some delays, but isn't anticipating issues over the weekend. Air Canada says very few of its aircraft were using the affected software. Ukraine announced it has targeted 2 oil tankers, accusing Russia of using the ships to get around international sanctions. The assault comes as Ukrainian and U.S. officials are set to meet on Sunday to discuss ending the war, but not before Russia launched yet another deadly attack on Kyiv. Vincent McAviney has more from London.
The Black Sea near Turkey's Bosphorus Strait. Ahead is a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker. Cutting through the waves on an intercept course is a Ukrainian naval drone, seconds before impact on Friday. A direct hit on one of the aging, uninsured and unmarked vessels used by the Kremlin to circumvent sanctions on its oil exports. A drone attack on a second tanker further dented President Putin's war fund. In scenes that will bring a much-needed boost to Kyiv, both vessels burned overnight, causing critical damage that will take them out of service. Moscow responded with another night of heavy aerial bombardment, killing at least 2 and wounding 24. Weary Ukrainians forced into a now familiar routine of sleeping in metro stations and shelters, as over 600 drones and missiles targeted civilian homes and energy infrastructure. Half of Kyiv was left without power today. This fourth winter of war has seen a relentless bombardment by Russia on the electricity grid, pushing cities into rationing and rolling blackouts. A peace plan still feels far away for these Kyiv residents. This is intimidation by Russia. The attacks are targeting civilian populations in order to pressure the government to sign the agreement faster. Peace? I don't believe there will be peace anytime soon with such a neighbor. It's getting worse every day. President Zelensky will head to Paris on Monday to meet with French President Emmanuel Macron as he tries to reassure partners after losing his chief of staff in an anti-corruption investigation on Friday. He substituted former Defense Minister Rustem Umerov to lead a delegation to Washington this weekend for talks with American officials about their proposals. Kyiv will be hoping their attack on the Shadow Fleet might show the Trump administration they're still committed to repelling Russia however they can. Vincent McAviney, Global News, London.
In Hong Kong, public mourning is underway for the many victims of the city's deadly high-rise inferno earlier this week. This should not have happened in 2025, this man says, as he joined hundreds laying flowers and notes at a memorial for more than 120 people known to have died in the fire. Search crews are also sifting through the wreckage, looking for about 150 others still missing. Police have now arrested 14 people as they investigate possible corruption and negligence that may have led to the tragedy. In Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith has been speaking at her United Conservatives Party convention this weekend, a prime opportunity to celebrate concessions this week from Prime Minister Mark Carney in their MOU to build a pipeline to BC. But her collaboration with the federal government is getting a harsh response on the convention floor. Erik Bay has more from the UCP convention. Erik.
Colleen, many UCP members say Premier Danielle Smith still has the backing of the party, but her message of staying in Canada and working with the federal government doesn't have complete support, even after a pipeline memorandum earlier this week.
Victory is in sight. It is.
Some party faithful booing after the premier said a sovereign Alberta should be a part of Canada. Smith has stuck to that message while talk of Alberta separating from the rest of the country continues.
Albertans are frustrated, there's no doubt about it. And I think Canada has some work to do in convincing Albertans that this change of heart that we've seen in the last 48 hours is real and genuine. And so I understand the skepticism.
Her mention of the Memorandum of Understanding involving a pipeline partnership with Ottawa did get applause, as did a number of recent government policies the Premier brought up in her keynote address. But members at the annual meeting say the push for independence isn't going away, even if they also have faith in Smith.
The UCP doesn't want to be branded as a separatist party. I think last night's conversation and Jeff's talk last night showed the UCP what they needed to see. 70 or 80% of the people here are in favor of Alberta independence. That's very clear.
I think Albertans have had enough. Like, seriously, and it's not just pipelines, it's the government overreach, it's the taxation.
It doesn't appear Alberta and Ottawa are completely in sync after their energy agreement. The Premier says her government will introduce legislation that prevents agencies from enforcing the federal gun buyback and also from prosecuting folks who are protecting their homes and families from intruders. Not many details on that yet, but the Premier says that legislation could be introduced as soon as Monday. Colleen?
Erik Bay in Edmonton. Thanks, Erik. In Montreal, McGill University faces criticism after making major cuts to its varsity sports program, eliminating 25 teams for student athletes. Among them, its more than a century-old track and field program, cut just before they hosted their first home track meet of the season. Felicia Perillo reports on the reasons for the cuts and concerns other universities could follow suit.
In inside of McGill's historic indoor track, the season's home opener was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, many athletes say it feels bittersweet because this season may very well be their last.
I came to McGill University because I was told that we would have a track and field program here, and most of my teammates are also here because we have a track and field program, and we would not have attended this school if we'd known that this was a possibility.
Earlier this week, McGill announced that this season would be the last for 25 varsity teams, including the men's and women's track and field teams. The program was preparing to enter its 126th season.
I was in the library with my friends and my teammates, and we were shaking and crying, and everyone was just so heartbroken, so shocked, and it was really hard to rally the troops to believe that there was a possibility that we could start fighting this thing.
The student athletes say they worry that removing varsity track here will cause ripple effects in the sport across the country.
This is the one of the only 3 indoor bank tracks in Canada. And also, I think it kind of starts an idea that this could happen at further universities. I think this is kind of just a start.
Earlier this week, McGill said the decision was not taken lightly. It said the cuts were made due to the ongoing challenges related to facility space, budget constraints, and human resources capacity. In a later statement, the university added that the decision follows years of review and 2 independent assessments that confirmed their current structure was unsustainable. But for the athletes, the explanation offers little comfort. Many say it feels like their program was taken from them without warning and without a chance to fight for it. The athletes promise not to give up that fight until their very last race. Felicia Perillo, Global News, Montreal.
A massive cyber attack exposes data from hundreds of thousands of Nova Scotians. Coming up, what the privacy breach says about how your data is stored. Despite some economic uncertainty, new spending highs were reached this Black Friday. In the U.S., shoppers spent a record $11.8 billion online yesterday, a more than 9% jump from last year, according to Adobe Analytics, which tracks e-commerce. Canadian e-commerce platform Shopify says its merchants raked in a record $6.2 billion in sales worldwide. Nova Scotia's premier blasted the province's power utility this week over its response to a cyber attack that exposed sensitive data from nearly half of Nova Scotia Power's customers. Premier Tim Houston says the company has failed to properly explain the breach, and he's considering fines. Heidi Petrocek reports on the scale of the attack and how it's shedding light on how your personal data is stored.
And we recognize that the cyber incident continues to impact our customers.
Nova Scotia's private utility has been under intense scrutiny ever since data it collected from almost 300,000 ratepayers was stolen by hackers in April. Banking information, driver's license details, even social insurance numbers, all information Nova Scotia Power has said was then published on the dark web.
The evidence now suggests that this was a Russian-based actor. And very sophisticated attacker.
The corporation has been sending letters to affected customers and offering 5 years of free credit monitoring. Notifications sent out recently have raised questions about just how long the company keeps customer data.
My father and I practiced together for 14 years, and he passed away around 18 years ago.
Imagine chiropractor David Dunn's surprise when he got a letter from Nova Scotia Power to his deceased dad. He posted it online, and at least 20 other people shared the same experience.
And about dear loved ones passing away, different addresses. And I just thought, wow, I'm not the only one out there.
We did try to scrub that information. Unfortunately, we missed a few, and I apologize again.
You have to wonder, why did the organization keep the information as long as it did?
According to Canada's Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, organizations mustn't retain information longer than necessary for the original purpose, although defining that is up to the company.
You don't know how long they're going to retain your information, and we really have no way of verifying. That's a big problem.
This is an emerging issue throughout the world.
Prompting a Halifax law firm to start its own probe to see if the breach might qualify as a class action lawsuit.
These types of situations are what often precipitate social change and legal change and legislative change.
The Federal Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada is also investigating and plans to finalize its review in the coming months. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Ahead, the newly crowned largest city in the world and how urbanization is stressing infrastructure everywhere. Rescue crews in Sri Lanka have been airlifting people to safety after a cyclone caused major flooding and landslides. More than 150 people have been killed and 500,000 others have been impacted by flooding. The world has a new largest city. In a sweeping new UN report, Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, surged from 33rd to #1, now estimated at nearly 42 million people. 9 of the top 10 megacities are now in Asia as urban populations double worldwide, putting major stresses on global infrastructure. Touria Isri reports on the findings that put new pressure on city planners all over the world.
The city of Jakarta has roughly the same population as all of Canada.
More than half of the megacities are in Asia. Jakarta, Indonesia, with nearly 42 million inhabitants, is the world's most populous city today.
Indonesia's vibrant and very congested capital has overtaken Tokyo, which once held the top spot, after the United Nations overhauled its counting methods to be more consistent across countries.
Timely and reliable data are key to effective planning.
Jakarta is home to an estimated 42 million people, followed by Dhaka, Bangladesh with 37 million, and Tokyo with 33 million.
Projections indicate that fast-growing Dhaka, Bangladesh, will surpass Jakarta to become the world's largest city by 2050.
Both megacities are facing massive environmental challenges as their populations swell. Jakarta is slowly sinking due to rising sea levels, excessive groundwater pumping, and rapid development, which is why officials are building a new capital city on the island of Borneo. Iran is also raising the possibility of relocating its capital with a population of 10 million people because of a water crisis.
That is a story that we see throughout South Asia and in the developing world, where cities are growing in population, but the cities do not have the resources.
According to the UN report, 45% of the world's 8.2 billion people live in cities, more than double the share in 1950. And by 2050, the UN expects 2/3 of the world's population growth to happen in urban centers.
The challenge that we are facing in Canada on urban living is the housing affordability crisis. Travel times are increasing, and they are increasing prohibitively in certain cities like Toronto and at rush hour in Montreal.
Growing congestion and a construction crunch that urban planners say requires a rethink for Canadian communities big, medium, and small. Touria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
Pope Leo has made a symbolic stop on his first trip to Turkey, visiting Istanbul's Blue Mosque, his first visit to a Muslim place of worship as pontiff. He was led on a tour of the 17th century landmark. While he removed his shoes in a sign of respect, the Pope did not pray inside as some of his predecessors have done. The Vatican says the visit was about reflection and listening. Leo also met with Patriarch Bartholomew today, the spiritual leader of Eastern Orthodox Christians. Intergenerational learning, the Canadian care home that's become a classroom. Next. British playwright Tom Stoppard, the Oscar and Golden Globe-winning screenwriter of Shakespeare in Love, has died. In a statement, United Agents said Stoppard died peacefully at his home in southern England, surrounded by his family. In a career spanning decades, Stoppard mastered stage, screen, and radio, earning an Academy Award for Shakespeare in Love and a record 5 Tony Awards for Best Play. Knighted in 1997, Stoppard capped his career with his final play, Leopoldstadt, in 2020, a deeply personal drama inspired by his own Jewish family history. Tom Stoppard was 88. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. In Toronto, students who've earned decades of knowledge are sharing those life lessons with much younger classmates. And as Megan King reports, it's not just the grad students who are benefiting.
Students met at Christie Gardens retirement home for one final class as they marked the end of this year's intergenerational classroom. Now done for the semester, they're reflecting on their greatest lessons.
I considered someone to be old when they were above 70, but just through learning through this class, I've now written that there's no age and it's more of a subjective feeling about how you feel rather than like a definite number.
Global News first met these students back in September at the beginning of the semester. Since then, friendships have formed and wisdom has been transferred.
I think there's a lot to learn from the younger and the older generation, and bringing that together is beneficial for both.
In the first week, all of the older adults were sitting on one side of the room and all the younger folks were sitting on one side of the room. And by week 3, when they're working on assignments and things together, they're all now saving seats for each other, they're mixing and they're mingling, they've exchanged phone numbers.
That was the case for Fred and Aiden, who have become good friends through the class. They've now exchanged email addresses to stay in touch moving forward.
Every time we got to know more each other, the young and the older. I'm 94 and you're
22.
22. Young people are wonderful. They are. They inspire me to keep going on.
It's been so meaningful to experience this relationship that, you know, young students don't have an opportunity to. Like, when do we all sit in a room with 30 other older adults? Basically never. So it's been really awesome to hear Fred's experiences, and yeah, I've learned it's made aging feel a lot less daunting.
A few teary goodbyes marked the end of the semester for these classmates, but the friendships made will continue on. Megan King, Global News.
Wonderful. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada showcases the Snow Kings Winter Festival in Yellowknife earlier this year, a patriotic quilt near 150 Mile House, BC, and a snow plow in Jackfish Lake, Saskatchewan. Please keep emailing your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Good night.